For decades, fans couldn't understand one simple thing: how two of country music's most soulful storytellers, Lee Ann Womack and Alan Jackson, managed to dominate the charts for years without ever recording a single note together. Their careers rose in parallel lines through the 90s and early 2000s, crossing paths at award shows, festivals, and Nashville galas. They smiled for cameras, traded compliments, and disappeared back into their own creative worlds. On paper, it looked inevitable that they'd team up, yet nothing ever happened. Rumors filled the silence. Some fans believed their record labels were fiercely protective, refusing to let either star's brand blur with another. Others whispered that the two artists' perfectionism got in the way, that both would rather wait years than force a duet that didn't feel completely authentic. Behind the scenes, industry insiders hinted that timing was the true villain. When Womack was at her commercial peak with I Hope You Dance, Jackson was touring non-stop across the US, balancing fame with his devotion to traditional country roots. Their schedules never seemed to breathe at the same time. But there was something deeper than logistics. Both artists had built reputations on emotional truth. Womack's voice carried the ache of real-life experience, the quiet heartbreaks, the hard choices, the things country music is built on. Jackson, meanwhile, guarded his sound like a family heirloom, refusing to chase fleeting radio trends. For him, every lyric had to sound honest, lived in. Merging those two philosophies would take more than a phone call. It required a song that could hold both their worlds without compromise. And so, they waited. Each release, each award season, each missed opportunity quietly raised expectations higher. Fans began to treat the "what if" as legend. A duet between Womack and Jackson became something mythical, the collaboration everyone talked about, but no one could prove was real. Even within Nashville circles, whispers of "it's happening soon" came and went like passing storms. Then, one night, everything shifted. During a private industry rehearsal in Nashville, sources say Womack and Jackson finally shared an unscripted moment, a brief conversation that broke years of polite distance. It wasn't an announcement or a grand plan, just a genuine exchange between two artists who'd spent their lives chasing authenticity. That small spark would quietly set the stage for what came next. Because sometimes, before the world hears a duet, the connection starts with something far simpler, a mutual respect that refuses to fade. And that meeting? It would lead to a creative partnership built on patience, timing, and a promise that when they finally did sing together, it would mean something. That brief exchange in Nashville could easily have been another missed moment, a passing chat lost in the noise of rehearsals and backstage schedules. But fate, it seems, had a different plan. Reports later surfaced that the two ended up in the same rehearsal space purely by chance. Jackson was preparing a tribute performance. Womack had been invited as a surprise guest for another segment. When they realized they'd be in the same building, the idea of someday finally started to feel real. What followed wasn't a formal collaboration meeting or a press-ready handshake. It was quieter. Two veterans swapping stories about music that mattered. According to one insider, Womack confessed that she'd been offered several duet opportunities over the years, but turned most down because they didn't feel like her. Jackson, known for being selective to a fault, laughed and admitted he'd done the same. They bonded over that shared stubbornness, that refusal to record anything that didn't come from a place of truth. Their conversations stretched longer than expected, weaving through memories of touring, songwriting, and the shifting tides of country radio. There was nostalgia, but also realism. Both understood the industry had changed. Image mattered more, authenticity less. And yet, neither had surrendered that old-school heart that made their music timeless. Out of that honesty grew the first real sense that a duet wasn't just possible, it was necessary. But it wasn't simple. Between label obligations, personal commitments, and overlapping tour schedules, every attempt to plan a recording session seemed to fall apart. Some close to the project joked that the universe was testing their patience. Others believed that the delay was destiny, a sign that the right song simply hadn't appeared yet. Womack herself would later hint that music finds its moment, suggesting that forcing it too early might have ruined what they eventually created. Still, that Nashville encounter planted a seed. Over the following months, Word quietly spread through industry circles that Womack and Jackson were finally talking music. Writers started sending songs their way, producers pitched ideas, and executives began whispering about a potential classic in the making. But both artists held back. They wanted something that spoke to who they truly were. Not a commercial stunt, but a story told through harmony. And just when people began to think it would never happen, a song arrived that seemed to fit them both perfectly. It carried themes of endurance, loyalty, and love that survives time. Exactly what their careers embodied. That song was Till the End. The moment they heard it, they knew. After years of waiting, dodged schedules, and endless rumors, the collaboration was finally about to become reality. And what came from that decision would not just surprise the industry, it would redefine what a country duet could be. When Till the End finally found its way to Lee Ann Womack and Alan Jackson, it didn't just land in their laps, it felt like it had been waiting for them. The song had floated around Nashville for years, passing through the hands of songwriters who couldn't quite find it a home. But when Jackson's team came across it during the planning of his 2010 Freight Train album, something about its tone, soft, reflective, and mature, stood out. He immediately thought of Womack. By then, both artists had lived enough life to understand the song's quiet power. Till the End wasn't about young love or heartbreak. It was about endurance, about two people who'd been through life's storms and still chose to hold on. Jackson reportedly said the song felt like a conversation between equals, and that's exactly what he wanted it to be. He didn't want a flashy duet. He wanted truth, the kind that only experience can sing. When Womack heard the demo, she knew instantly. According to one studio insider, she said, "It sounds like something we've already lived." Her voice, known for carrying that mix of vulnerability and strength, was the emotional counterweight to Jackson's smooth, grounded delivery. Together, they didn't just sing Till the End, they inhabited it. But getting the sound right took time. Producers described the recording process as surgical yet spiritual. Each harmony was built layer by layer. They tested different tempos, experimented with phrasing, and even debated whether the instrumentation should lean toward traditional steel guitar or a more acoustic, modern touch. Every decision mattered. And behind the microphones, something unexpected happened. That professional chemistry they'd both been known for evolved into something deeper, an artistic trust. Womack adjusted her phrasing to complement Jackson's softer tone. Jackson, in turn, opened his delivery, letting his voice drift slightly above the melody to meet hers. It wasn't about outperforming, it was about blending, breathing as one. Fans later said the song sounded effortless, but the truth was the opposite. It took days of rehearsals, endless playback sessions, and small but deliberate changes. A half-second pause here, a softened consonant there, to make it feel natural. That's what separates great collaborations from good ones. You don't hear the effort, but you feel it. And when the final mix played through the studio speakers, there was silence. Not the awkward kind, the reverent kind. The kind that happens when everyone in the room knows they've just captured lightning in a bottle. Till the End was more than a duet. It was a declaration that country music, at its core, still belonged to storytellers. It reminded listeners that timeless songs aren't manufactured, they're earned. But as it turned out, the story didn't stop in the studio. Because when the song finally reached the public, the reaction was far bigger and far more emotional than either artist had expected. When Till the End finally hit the airwaves, it didn't explode onto the charts overnight. It crept in slowly, like an old memory rediscovered. But within weeks, something remarkable happened. The song started resonating in a way that no marketing campaign could have engineered. Fans described it as real, pure, and the kind of country you don't hear anymore. It was as if the entire genre had been holding its breath for something genuine, and this duet finally gave them that release. Critics were quick to notice. Reviewers from Nashville to LA praised the track for its emotional restraint, the kind of storytelling that lets silence speak louder than sound. One writer put it best: In a time when country music was flirting with pop, Womack and Jackson reminded everyone what sincerity sounds like. Social media lit up. Fans posted reaction videos, covering the song in small-town bars, sharing live renditions online. The duet wasn't just a song, it became a moment. And the numbers followed. Streaming surged, country radio picked it up, and fan requests flooded in. But perhaps the most telling reaction came from fellow artists. Younger singers started referencing "Till the End" in interviews, saying it made them want to write songs that mean something again. Behind the scenes, the success surprised even industry veterans. Many had quietly believed the duet would be respected, maybe even praised by critics, but not commercially impactful. Instead, it redefined what a classic collaboration could look like in a modern era. The slow, steady rise of "Till the End" mirrored the same patience that created it. Proof that real music doesn't need hype, it just needs heart. But while the numbers told one story, the emotional reaction told another. Fans began speculating online that the song's power came from something personal, that perhaps both artists were drawing from private experiences of love and endurance. Neither Womack nor Jackson ever confirmed or denied it, but that mystery only added to the song's allure. And as powerful as the recording was, the next chapter would take things even further. Because soon after, the duo found themselves standing under the warm lights of the Ryman Auditorium, ready to bring that chemistry to life in front of a live audience. No one knew what to expect that night, but what unfolded on that stage would prove that some songs aren't just performed, they're lived. When the lights dimmed inside the Ryman Auditorium that evening, the crowd expected a polished, well-rehearsed performance, but what they got instead was something raw, intimate, and utterly unforgettable. Alan Jackson and Lee Ann Womack walked on stage side by side, not as superstars chasing applause, but as two artists carrying a shared story. From the first quiet guitar strum, you could feel the stillness ripple through the audience. Their voices met, like old friends finding each other after years apart, hesitant at first, then perfectly in sync. Jackson's calm drawl set the tone, but it was Womack's voice, steady yet trembling with emotion, that lifted the song into something transcendent. They weren't performing till the end. That night, they were living it. What made the moment even more powerful was how unplanned it seemed. Just hours before the show, insiders revealed that both artists had been fighting off nerves. Jackson had joked backstage that his voice wasn't warmed up enough, while Womack confessed she wasn't sure she could hold back tears when they hit the final chorus. But once the spotlight hit, those doubts dissolved into something bigger. Midway through the song, as the melody swelled, the camera panned across the audience, and there it was. Silence, tears, a standing crowd that seemed almost afraid to breathe. It wasn't the roar of a concert crowd. It was reverence. People weren't just watching, they were witnessing. After the final note faded, neither artist moved right away. Jackson looked over, gave Womack a small nod, and she smiled. The kind of smile that says, "We did it, and it was real." The crowd erupted, but both of them just stood there for a moment, soaking it in. That night's performance became an instant classic. Clips flooded social media within hours, and fans who hadn't even followed either artist began sharing it with captions like, "This is how country music should feel." One fan's comment captured the sentiment perfectly. They didn't just sing. They made time stop. The industry took notice too. Major outlets replayed the performance for weeks, calling it one of the most emotionally charged moments in modern country history. And even though neither artist was promoting a major tour at the time, the duet's live version reignited demand for both of them to collaborate again. But what fans didn't know was that something had shifted after that night, not just in their careers, but in their artistic chemistry. That Ryman performance didn't just mark a high point. It quietly opened the door to something even deeper. And that's where the story takes a turn. Back to the studio, where the bond that began in song would soon evolve into something unexpected, something that blurred the line between creation and connection. When Alan and Lee Ann returned to the studio weeks later, it wasn't just another recording session. It felt like a reunion. The success of "Till the End" had created something rare in the industry: genuine trust. They'd gone from cautious collaborators to creative partners who no longer needed to explain their instincts. One glance across the mixing room was enough to know what the other was thinking. But this time, they weren't just revisiting the past. They were experimenting. Jackson, usually known for his traditional sound, surprised everyone by suggesting they try a stripped-down acoustic approach. "Let's take the shine off it," he reportedly said, "and let the soul do the work." Womack agreed instantly. She wanted the emotion to come through untouched. No heavy production, no polished perfection, just truth. The studio transformed into a creative sanctuary. No managers, no executives, just a handful of musicians who understood what they were chasing. The sessions stretched late into the night, with coffee cups scattered across consoles and laughter echoing between takes. But amid the ease, there was also a quiet intensity, an unspoken awareness that what they were creating wasn't just another song. At one point, during a playback of a newly recorded harmony, Womack reportedly turned to Jackson and said softly, "It feels like we're telling a secret." He nodded, replying, "Maybe that's what people hear." Something we're not even saying out loud. That moment summed up their collaboration perfectly. It wasn't about technical perfection. It was about emotional honesty. Their combined presence brought out something dormant in both of them. Jackson's vocals, often cool and composed, carried a subtle ache that hadn't been heard since his early records. Womack, in turn, sang with newfound warmth, less guarded, more personal. Together, they were rediscovering what made country music timeless: vulnerability wrapped in melody. By the end of those sessions, the producers realized something profound. This wasn't just about two artists recording music. It was about two souls reflecting each other's truths. The same chemistry that made Till the End a hit had deepened into a rare creative language. As they left the studio on the final night, the engineers played back one of the last tracks they recorded, a slow, haunting piece about resilience. The sound filled the room like a heartbeat, and for a few moments, everyone just listened. No one spoke. It was as if the room itself knew it had witnessed something that couldn't be replicated. That's what made their story so compelling. It wasn't built on hype or headlines. It was built on authenticity, patience, and a kind of shared understanding that no chart position could ever capture. And even as they went their separate ways after that final session, the echoes of that connection lingered, not just in the songs, but in the silence between them. Because in the end, what Alan Jackson and Lee Ann Womack created wasn't just music. It was memory. The kind that never really fades, even long after the final note ends. After those final studio sessions wrapped, both artists quietly went back to their own worlds, Alan returning to his family and solo projects, and Lee Ann stepping into new musical experiments. But the silence between them didn't go unnoticed. Fans who had witnessed their collaboration began asking questions. Were they planning another duet? Was there a follow-up album coming? Or had something happened behind the scenes? The internet, as it often does, began to fill in the blanks. Rumors started swirling that their connection in the studio had gone deeper than just artistic chemistry. Fan forums dissected every onstage glance, every pause in interviews, and every cryptic lyric that followed. Some swore they could feel something unspoken between the two, a familiarity that couldn't be faked. Of course, neither Jackson nor Womack ever confirmed anything. They stayed professional, gracious, and private, exactly as country legends tend to do. But even in their silence, people sensed that what they shared was rare. It wasn't about scandal or gossip. It was about the kind of creative bond that changes how you see your craft forever. When Womack released her later projects, traces of that collaboration were still there. A certain softness in her tone, a quieter confidence in her phrasing. Meanwhile, Jackson's next albums carried that same reflective warmth, as if he'd rediscovered a part of himself that had been missing for years. Industry insiders noticed it too, calling that era the revival of emotional country. And in many ways, that spark started with Till the End. But beyond the speculation, something more meaningful was happening. Their duet had opened conversations across Nashville about what authenticity really meant in modern country music. Younger artists began citing their work as inspiration, saying it reminded them that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was power. And then came the interviews. When journalists asked Lee Ann what made Till the End so special, she didn't talk about the production or the accolades. She simply said, "Because it's honest." That one word carried more weight than any award could. Alan echoed the same sentiment in his own quiet way. When asked about working with Womack, he smiled and said, "Sometimes, when you sing with someone, you don't need to say much. You just understand." That simple truth said everything fans needed to know, and maybe that's why their story lingered long after the charts moved on. Over time, the rumors faded, but the bond remained etched in the music. It was the kind of connection that didn't need public confirmation. It lived in every note, every shared lyric, every pause that felt a little too real to be rehearsed. And that's where the magic of their story truly lies. Not in what was said, but in what was felt. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't the ones you tell out loud. They're the ones you leave behind, for people to feel, to wonder about, to remember. And as country music evolved, filled with trends and fleeting hits, the legacy of that unspoken bond refused to fade. In fact, it quietly shaped the next generation of artists who wanted to bring heart back into a genre that had almost forgotten what soul sounded like. Years have passed since Alan Jackson and Lee Ann Womack stood together under those Ryman lights. But even today, their duet, Till the End, continues to echo through country music like a ghost that refuses to leave. Not haunting, just quietly present, reminding everyone of a time when simplicity carried more power than spectacle. When fans revisit that song, they don't just hear a duet. They hear two lives woven through melody. Two artists speaking to something bigger than fame or success, and maybe that's why it still feels timeless. While the industry has shifted toward louder, flashier productions, Till the End remains proof that emotional truth never ages. In interviews years later, both artists reflected on that era with the same soft nostalgia. Womack called it one of those rare moments when music felt pure again. Jackson said it reminded him why he fell in love with storytelling in the first place. And for those who grew up listening, it became more than just a collaboration. It became a benchmark for what genuine artistry sounds like. But their legacy went beyond a single song. Their partnership subtly redefined what duets could mean in the modern era. Instead of chasing commercial appeal, they leaned into emotional honesty. They proved that collaboration isn't about blending voices, it's about merging truths. That lesson rippled across Nashville. You could hear echoes of their influence in countless younger artists who began writing slower, more heartfelt songs, unafraid to be vulnerable. Their impact even stretched into live performances. Decades later, when the Country Music Hall of Fame hosted a tribute concert, several performers covered Till the End, each trying to capture that same elusive intimacy. But as one young artist said afterward, you can't recreate that kind of connection. You can only honor it. And maybe that's the most fitting ending to their story, that it never really ended. Their paths may have diverged, but their music still meets in the middle every time someone presses play. What they created together wasn't designed for the spotlight. It was crafted for the quiet, for the late-night drives, the heartbreaks, the moments of reflection when words fail but melody speaks. For many fans, hearing that duet feels like a memory you never lived but somehow still remember. Familiar, warm, a little bittersweet. And that's the beauty of true artistry. It doesn't just entertain, it stays with you, shaping how you feel, how you see, how you remember. In the end, Alan Jackson and Lee Ann Womack didn't just record a song, they recorded a feeling, the kind that time can't erase, and imitation can't capture. Because some voices aren't meant to fade into history, they're meant to linger, softly, endlessly, reminding us that real country music, the kind born from truth and heart, never really dies.